Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone who's here. Good afternoon. Thank you. Our beloved Reverend Voorhees will say a few words.
On behalf of the Mission Board and the people of St. Cyprian's Episcopal Church, welcome. It's nice to see so many of you here on this fine afternoon. I think many of you know that St. Cyprian's is 114 years old, this building is, which means that quite a few prayers and tears and laughter have all been accepted and kind of sponged into the wood so that today it still keeps coming out for us after all these many years. It was founded as the African American Episcopal Church in town when the societal norms didn't allow for people of color to worship at the Episcopal Church downtown. And it has since been a cornerstone in this neighborhood. I'm really honored to be able to lead the congregation today. We're doing quite well. I think many of you, as you will leave here for our reception, will cross our commons. It's our new expression, a transformation of the space between the church and the mission house here. You'll see about 4,000 square feet of pavers that we have put down with a labyrinth embedded in that. Eventually this spring we will be building an outdoor chapel at this west end of that, an outdoor chapel that will be dedicated to Dr. Dorothy Israel. So we will have a gate at the entrance over by the wall coming from Martin Luther King, and a prayer wall, which will be similar to something you would find like in Jerusalem at the Wailing Wall, where there'll be cracks for people to put prayer notes into the wall. This is a project for the entire community, not just for the church, but for all people who want to come and to use that space. So it's wonderful to have you here in this space, in our space, this afternoon. Once again, welcome to St. Cyprian's. It's nice to have you here.
Thank you, Reverend Ted, for your fine welcome. As president of the AAUW St. Augustine branch, I want to welcome everyone to this wonderful event. My name is Karen Zolkin. We have a treasured member, Dr. Dorothy Israel, who has organized and is speaking in this important event. Thank you, Dee, for all that you do for the community and for AAUW. I'd like to tell you a little bit about AAUW. That stands for the American Association of University Women. And we are part of a national organization that is 132 years old, started in 1881. This is an organization of women and men with college degrees that is breaking down barriers for women and girls. The St. Augustine branch has been here almost 50 years. We'll celebrate our 50th anniversary in 2016. Through research, scholarships, fellowships, legal advocacy, and lobbying, AAUW has been at the forefront of making change in the U.S. and in the world.
Let me again welcome everyone here. It's good to see old friends and to meet new ones. This is a program, I hope, of love. I conceived of it because each year, for the last 11 years, University Women, she didn't mention that, has had a program relating to the African American experience. And I thought this year, rather than to lecture, that we would include dance and song. I mentioned it to a friend, Oween Weber, and she said, well, it was an artistic melange. So that's what we're going to present today. It's really a tribute to the African American family in St. Augustine, their courage, their resilience, their struggles, and their faith in the Almighty. So I hope you will enjoy. Next will be our dear Pastor Deena will say a few words.
What a delight to look out and see this place pretty full for this occasion and the wonderful program that Dee Israel put together. I'm standing before you today as a living testimony to the difference the American Association of University Women has made in the lives of countless young people. I personally could never have gone to college without a financial gift from AAUW. My childhood was very stormy and traumatic. My father was a nasty Irish drunk, so there was an awful lot of fighting and physical and emotional abuse when my father was drunk, which was often. He also couldn't keep a job because of his drinking. So we were evicted or had to move countless times. In fact, we had moved 13 times by the time I got to high school. Clothes were from the Goodwill or any other thrift shop. We were the recipients of care packages from our church. We never owned a car. And always there was the fighting between my mother and father, and often directed a little more particularly at my two brothers, but sometimes me. In other words, my young life was characterized by anxiety, instability, and sometimes fear. But I was blessed with a love of learning and a love of sports. I graduated second in my high school class and was captain of the swimming team and the basketball team. So sports events were a very happy time for me. Best of all, I had an English teacher who believed in me and encouraged me to apply to colleges, even though it seemed hopeless. Because of my academic record, I was accepted at Syracuse University and even was awarded a scholarship for the tuition. But I had no money for room and board and books, which meant I could not actually start college. At that point, that wonderful English teacher presented my situation to our local AAUW, and they made all the difference in my life by their financial gift. It seemed like I had won the lottery jackpot, and then it was actually possible for me to go to college. Once there, I was able, through other loans and scholarships and work programs, to complete my 4 years and graduated with a Bachelor of Science in microbiology. Also, I met my future husband there. Woo, what would Freud say about that? And 50 years later, that was still a great thing. I worked in the medical field after school and went to the University of Pennsylvania for a master's degree in virology. And while I was working in multiple sclerosis research, my life turned upside down and I experienced a calling to the priesthood. It was so powerful that we all stopped in our tracks, the kids and my husband and me, and I attended General Theological Seminary in New York, and I was ordained in 1980, and here I am. That gift from AAUW was a huge turning point in my life. So I'm here today to thank you for myself and for all the other women like me that AAUW has helped through the years. Keep on doing your wonderful work, and God bless you.
Thank you, Pastor Deena. I have to look back in history. Now, many of us have heard, if you know anything about the history of St. Augustine, a conquistador named Juan Guerrero. He was from Africa, and he was the first person who we know about who was on the crew, part of the crew, with Ponce de Leon. But I wondered, where did he come from? Well, we have to go back in history. So that's why I call this the beginning. I did a little research and found out that the Moors from Morocco, an Muslim tribe, were known to be adventurers and explorers. Without going into too much history, the Moors conquered Spain, a Christian country, in the 8th century. They introduced industry and a way of life unknown to Europe. They brought cotton, rice, sugar, cane, dates, strawberries, lemons to families in Spain. Copper, gold, silver, tin, lead, iron, quicksilver. They developed scientific opportunities. They developed astronomy, chemistry, physics, mathematics, geography, philosophy. Education was universal and available to all. These were Muslims, while in Christian Europe, 99% of the population was illiterate, and even kings could neither read or write. Imagine that. I don't know if you knew that. I didn't learn that in school. But anyway, I did that in some of my research. The Moors remained in Spain for 700 years. Okay? Now, they also introduced gunpowder. One of the ironies of the story of the Moors was that the gunpowder that they introduced in Spain, when Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand took the throne, they used the same gunpowder in a bloody battle that lasted for 2 years to drive the Muslim Moors out of Moorish Spain. And Christianity began to flourish in Europe. So Spain then successfully built their empire and became the leaders in Europe in agricultural science, architecture, and the arts. However, many blacks remained there after the battles. So this can tell you why Juan Guerrero, an African conquistador, might have eventually met up with Ponce de Leon. They had fought in Mexico, Cuba, and Puerto Rico before venturing into the New World. Guerrero was an interesting African. He was born in Africa, traveled to Lisbon, was baptized as a Christian, because in most of the African countries at that time they were Muslims, and he later joined the Spanish expedition. He was the first to develop wheat in the New World and became rich, but died poor. That's another story. So if you want to really read more about Juan Guerrero, there's lots there for you to do. But anyway, I wanted to tie up the fact that African played a role in terms of the development of Europe and also coming to the United States, coming to the New World. So that's how I think that Juan Guerrero could have met up with Ponce de Leon on his ship and come to America. So that's very important for us to know about in terms of that. They kind of leave us out of history so often. In September of 1565, Pedro Menendez arrived and claimed the land for Spain. He brought 50 enslaved Africans with him. They were the builders of Florida and this area. They were the carpenters, the blacksmiths, the farmers. They were found to be hard workers and helped St. Augustine to grow. This is proof also that the first free black child was born here. A free black couple also were married here in 1606, and that was 15 years before the Pilgrims landed on Plymouth Rock. You see how errors in history get made and seldom get corrected because it remains in our psyche and in our history books. We have to change some of that. But anyway, this is how the black family began to grow. Thank you, Jean. That was beautiful. The second part, as you see, it says the escape. It has to do with the development of slavery and what blacks did about it. We all know about the Middle Passage. Blacks were brought in large numbers to work on plantations for long hours in the cotton, rice, tobacco fields. They had no rights and were treated as property. That's where the great divide of the African American family grew. We have great depiction of this in the movie of Roots or 12 Years a Slave. We see vividly how efforts were made to continue to destroy the black family, which continues today, by the way, in many other forms. South Carolina had many plantations. It was where Francisco Menendez, an enslaved African, who, like others, were determined to become free after hearing rumors that Florida would provide freedom for runaways, provided they converted to Catholicism and served in the militia against the British. This became a golden opportunity for enslaved Africans to attain their freedom. Many of the plantations were located on river or coastal areas, and transportation by boat was a possibility for escape. The first attempt that we know of were a total of 13 enslaved Africans who dared to make the treacherous trip from South Carolina. There were 10 men, 3 women, and 1 child who attempted the journey by boat. They were successful in reaching the Florida shore Others later made the trip by land over 300 miles. They understood the trip would not be easy, but it was harder than they could ever imagine. Venturing out at night, often no moon to guide them, clothes getting torn from the leaves and trees, hearing the owls and other night creatures not knowing if they were bounty hunters, making sounds like a bird to catch the runaways. Oftentimes, they didn't know which way to go. The Yamasee Indians were helpful because they were experts in the knowledge of the territory and gave instructions on the way to proceed. And also, the runaways stayed in their homes. They knew if they were caught, they would be dragged back to the brutal slavery system in South Carolina. They felt terror. Many did not make it to St. Augustine and died from the scorching sun. Food was meager as their food had run out. They were thirsty for water. It was a horrible trip. But when one desires freedom, one will do anything to gain that freedom.
When Israel was in Egypt's land, let my people go. Oppressed so hard they could not stand, let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt's land. Tell old Pharaoh to let my people go. The Lord told Moses what to do. Let my people go. To lead the children of Israel through. Let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt's land. Tell old Pharaoh to let my people go. They journeyed on at his command. Let my people go. And came at length to Canaan's land. Let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt's land. Tell old Pharaoh to let my people go. Let us all from bondage flee. Let my people go. And let us all in Christ be free. Let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt's land. Tell old Pharaoh to let my people go.
Thank you, Art. The next item is building Fort Mose. Once in Florida, the governor promised freedom as I said, provided the enslaved Africans convert to Catholicism and serve as soldiers for several years fighting the British. They were glad to do so because of the cruel way they had been treated by the British. There were hundreds who finally made the trip, and it became known as Fort Mose. The Spanish needed a strong defense against the British, and the black militia representation was important. They built thatch houses and protective walls. The whites were unbelievably kind to them, providing food and helping in the building of the thatch houses. Fort Mose stands as a monument to the courageous African Americans who often lost their lives in the struggle for freedom. It became the symbol of hope for freedom of the black family. but I want to move on or move back to what it was like living here before the Civil Rights Movement. And our expert on that is Janie Price, and she has a history of her own, whether she'll say it or not, but Dr. Martin Luther King slept at her home because he had to be moved frequently from place to place to save his life. So Janie, come on up and tell the story, what it was like to live here before. And I guess I got interested in St. Augustine's history from my husband, who would tell all kinds of stories of what happened to him growing up in this great city.
Thank you to Pastor Ted and the members of the congregation. Thank you for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to come back home. You know, I was raised right in this neighborhood, so when I was a preteen and a teenager, I used to come to this church because you had a black vicar named Father Woods, and his wife was named, we used to call her Aunt Charlotte, and they had a nephew named Cecil, and we used to play together. So I used to come to church here with Cecil and go and visit them in the parsonage, and so I played around this neighborhood. I'd like to take you on a journey with me to Lincolnville. The Lincolnville that I knew. At the time it was called Central Avenue. Let's talk about Central Avenue first. I was born in St. Augustine, and I went to local schools, and this was my territory. I was raised up on the street. I lived in about 4 places in St. Augustine, but this is the longest place that I've lived on Central Avenue. So I'd like to tell you something about it. When I was a child, we didn't go trick-or-treating. We had a neighbor right up here, we used to call him Uncle Bucky. He had a barn in his backyard. And all the children, all the black children in the neighborhood and all over, we used to dress up in our Halloween costumes, and Mr. Mason can tell you he went. In our costumes, and we'd make up, and he'd have a present for the boy or girl who had the best costume. We'd bob for apples. He would have a big old tin tub with apples in it, and we'd bob for apples, and they would have candied apples, and then we'd make this taffy, where they put butter on your hands, and and they made the taffy, and the kids had it. And then he would put a big can of pennies, and he put a string on it. And then the children would have to find this string and find this can of pennies, and you would be the winner. And this is what we did on Halloween. And it was fun, because we didn't go to people's houses and beg. We were in our own little world. We had things to do to keep us out of the street. And then the churches would have fairs once a year. The Catholic Church and St. Paul and all of the black churches would have a fair. And the ladies would make homemade aprons, and they would cook all this good food. And we would go up there and play. You know how kids love to run around and everything. And this was our time to relax. They would sell homemade fudge, Perlo, and everybody knows what that is. They would have Perlo and baked beans and fried chicken and all of these good things, and it wasn't very expensive, so we used to save our little pennies so we could buy it. And this was in our community. And then once a year, the Catholic Church, my church, would have a charity ball. And the women would dress up in their beautiful clothes and have reserved tables, and we'd fix the food, and we'd go there and have the dances. And we kept it up until the teenagers broke it up. They started fighting, so then we didn't have it anymore. But we placked the maypole in the Catholic Church in May 1st. We'd have the planting of the maypole. They used to have Emancipation Day parades. We had a beauty contest, the 4th of July, where the prettiest black girl in the neighborhood, they'd ride her through Lincolnville in Harry Fleming's pink Cadillac. You remember, I guess a lot of them, Barbara, you remember, and they'd have this beauty contest down on Butler's Beach, and they'd ride all through to Lincolnville. We'd have our parades, and everybody would just, dress up and decorate the cars, and we'd have just in our community. And we had a lot of things that we could participate in without going in the streets. And it was a joy to be a child in Lincolnville because you just had so many things to do. And now the adult people would look out for the children. And we never got in we didn't do drugs and we didn't go to jail and things like this because we were taught to respect our elders. And children don't do that anymore. I'm sorry, they don't. So if you will stretch your imagination, I'd like to take you on a tour of Lincolnville. And this is Central Avenue now. It's no more Martin Luther King. This is the time when this was Central Avenue before the times of Dr. King. In the 30s and 40s and 50s, I'd like to take you on a tour of Lincolnville to show you Lincolnville. And I'll start at Riberia Street. Riberia Street is the beginning of Lincolnville. We had a blacksmith who was a black man. And he was the only one in St. Augustine, and he shoed all the horses. And that was Uncle Bernie. This is what we called him. And he lived on Twine Street, which was Palmo Street when I was coming up. The street in back of it was Palmo Street. He and his wife lived on Palmo Street, and her name was, we used to call her Aunt Willie Mae. They belonged to First Baptist Church. Then Mr. Swilly had a grocery store on Riberia Street, a black-owned grocery store, and then it was a restaurant. Then they had a bar and grill that was run by a black man on Riberia Street. Then we get to Central Avenue. We had a tailor who made homemade suits and everything. We call him Uncle Nat. And his name was Nathaniel. I can't remember his last name. It was Nathaniel, the first name. He made clothes. He had his own tailoring business. He made clothes for white and black. He could make a tuxedo or a suit, anything. Then we had Mr. McCall's Barbershop, which was right on the corner of St. Francis. And in that barbershop were two chairs. There was Mr. Clyde Jenkins, who resided over there, and Mr. Theodore McCall. To come down a little further, we had a drugstore, Mrs. Pooler's drugstore. And man, she made the best hamburgers and stuff. We'd go back. She put a jukebox in the back of her thing so we could dance to the music, And after basketball games and football games for our school, we could go back there for a quarter. And then by 10 or 11 o'clock, she made us come home. But we all went back there and we had a good time. And then there was, after that, Mrs. Dorcas Saunders had a library. Black people couldn't go downtown to the library. So Mrs. Saunders started the library for black people. And it was right on the corner there where that little store is. And it was in the back there where we could go and check out books to read. You come further down and Miss Etta Walker had a little cafe. Right on where that little house is right up here. She had a little cafe there. And we could go there, during the hours that we didn't have, because she would serve food and stuff. And then you come down, Mr. Saunders had the meat market right on the corner where the little shop is. We had a black man who had a meat market. And he had everything in that meat market that you could want to. I remember my mother sending me there for 10 cents worth of cheese and 15 cents worth of bologna. This is the way you could buy then. And we used to go, we didn't have a cafeteria at our school, so we would go over there and buy bologna and soda crackers and everything, and made our lunch. And you further across the street was Mr. Sapp, had a shoe shop. And across the corner from him, Mr. Brown had a shoe shop. Come further down, right, there was a laundromat that was black owned, where you could take your clothes in and get them washed. Come further down Central Avenue, Mr. Red McPherson had a garage in his backyard. He used to fix cars. And you could bring your car to him and get it fixed for a little bit of money. And on the corner from that was Samuel Washington, who had a catering business. He catered all the parties that the people had in St. Augustine. And my mother was a waitress, and my mother and Barbara's mother were waitresses, and they dressed up in their white uniforms, and they would go on these parties. And they would also work at the hotels, waiting tables, doing our winter visitors. That was on, now we'll go to Washington Street. Washington Street was a hub of activity. We had, Mr. Bunk Blake had a pool room on Washington Street. Gladys McRae had a beauty shop. Farrell had a little shop where he sold food and stuff. I don't remember his last name now because it's been so long ago. And Slim had a pool, not a pool, but he had a little restaurant. And Mr. Tyson had a restaurant on the corner of Washington Street and Bridge Street. And he would have white tablecloths on his table. This was a nice restaurant. You could go in and get a nice meal. And around the corner from them, Frank Butler had a real estate office that he sold property. He sold all that property on St. Augustine Beach. A lot of that property was his. And Miss Julia Brooks also had a restaurant where we could go and play the jukebox and eat hamburgers. And St. Augustine, we just had a lot of things to do to keep us out of trouble. We had a lot of things to do. So Lincolnville was very, very active. We had activities that we could go to. And once a year, the Catholic Church had a charity ball, if I didn't mention this before. And we would dress up in our finery and go to the dances. And then the Black Beauticians, which Barbara was a member of, they would have a ball once a year, and it was formal. And the beauticians would pick ladies in the community to be models. And they would have their hairstyles modeled and have a fashion show. And this was the latest thing. And we'd have an orchestra to come from, what was his name? Dave and the House Rockers. Isn't that right, Bob? Yeah, they had a band who played good music, and his name was Dave. It was called Dave and, Abe and the House Rockers. Come from Palatka. On Washington Street, then when they had the Oddfellows Hall up above where those apartments are, right on Washington Street, there was a dance hall. Ray Charles started off in St. Augustine, Florida. He was at the D&B school. Ray Charles had a little band. They used to have dances. You get in for 50 cents. And then Little Richard was popular then. Little Richard used to come. 50 cents, you could go to a dance. And we'd go, they have a dance up there, you know, and the man would be at the door stamping hands, you know, putting a stamp on your hand so you couldn't come in without paying, you know. And it was just a lot to do in Lincolnville. I would like to read you a list of the black businesses we had in St. Augustine. On Washington, we had a tailor. I told you about Uncle Nat. We had McCall Barbershop. We had Huff Funeral Home, Bob Johnson Funeral Home, Sap Shop. Mr. Brown had the shoe shop. Mr. Tyson's restaurant, and Bob Edwards had a record shop on Washington Street. You could go buy all the latest records. We had a movie theater. We had everything. Then I have to bring it to the Iceberg. There was right on the corner was a office building. And we had our own iceberg, and he had the little chairs and things for children to sit in, Dr. Forward, and Otis Mills was our pharmacist. He was the only black pharmacist we've ever had in St. Augustine that I can remember. We'd go there on Sundays and sit down and have ice cream, and they would make their own ice cream. And they had the best rum raisin ice cream I've ever tasted. You remember that? They made that. And up above, we had Dr. Ford and Dr. Gordon was our dentist, and Dr. Ford was our doctor. And we had another doctor, Dr. Freeland. We had 2 black doctors and 1 dentist when I was growing up that took care of everybody. Because we couldn't go to the hospital. A lot of people didn't go to the hospital. They stayed at home. And women had their babies at home. We had midwives. First we had Mrs. Fanny Benjamin, who delivered me. And then we had Mrs. Ford after that. She lived right around here on Twine Street. And when Mrs. Ford came in, then the doctors and everything got involved in it because they had to be under a doctor's advice. But when I was born, they didn't have that. I was born on Railroad Avenue. There were 3 little houses just alike, and I was born out in West Augustine at home 87 years ago. So I can't remember all of the good times that Lincolnville was just beautiful. And we had all these nice things for all the kids to do to keep it. We didn't have the drugs and the drinking and the going to jail and things like that. It was just a joy to be a resident of Lincolnville. And I want to tell you, it still is. It still is. I enjoy where I live. I enjoy my friends. And I shall spend the rest of my days in Lincolnville. And you know, I have to tell the young people this. We don't have many young people in the audience, but Mrs. Vickers and I did the things that we did in the civil rights movement so that our young people would have a chance. We have no black men in business now. We don't have a black fireman. We don't have any mailmen. And when I came along, we had black mailmen and everything, but we have nothing like this now. Where are our young people? What are they doing? They need to wake up and smell the roses.
Right. Here in St. Augustine, for any length of time, you know about the struggle of the civil rights movement to obtain justice and opportunities for all. Telling the story of the civil rights struggles has placed St. Augustine on the map. Barbara Vickers, who's lived here all her life, will give you a glimpse of what occurred. Barbara, I call her the Queen of St. Augustine. She's a writer, she's an artist, and she was responsible for the foot soldiers' monument that is in the plaza, and she had to fight for it, because I was there when all of this happened. So, Barbara, come on, tell us a little what happened before the civil rights movement, what it was like, what families were like living here before that time.
First, I'll have to tell you about Dorothy. I'm feeling dizzy today, and I've been dizzy all week. So I called Dorothy and told her. And she says, well, you can't be dizzy because I have your name on the program and you have to be there. So I'm dizzy and I'm here. During the 60s, there was a short street, out on the west side in St. Augustine. And it was called Scott Street. And we decided that we were just tired of being segregated. Tired. So we said we will get together with the movement that was going on and see what we could do. So Dr. Haling, that was running the movement, he lived on Scott Street. So the West Side boys, they rallied together and they were going to protect Dr. Halen for the Klans and everything that came through. Well, they did, and one night they shot into Dr. Halen's home. The boys that were supposed to be protecting them was one of the boys, a group of boys that we had been feeding. That particular night, they ate too much and went to sleep. So they shot in his home. They just missed his wife, 2 children, and the boxer dog they killed. So when Dr. Halen came home and saw what had been done, he was furious. So the next day he took his family to Tallahassee, to his home, and his mother took care of the kids. And he came back. When he came back, he was already an angry young man because he had been in the service, and he just felt like when he came back home, he wasn't treated right. And he just didn't like that. So he was dedicated to trying to change. He wanted to change the world, but he knew he couldn't do that. But he had us all in the palm of his hands. Anything that Dr. Halen wanted done, we tried to do it. So on Scott Street, with these 11 houses, we called ourselves the Scott Street 11. Every house had a particular job to do. If it was to sit in, sleep in, wade in, swim in, kneel in, we did it. Some of the homes did everything. They picket and they was waiting in, they just did everything. They just couldn't do enough to try to get things done. Now, at night, when we went to the rallies and whatnot, I was scary. And I was trying to get over town to St. Paul Church or wherever it was. And I had a little blue Ford that would just break down on every corner. And when you would get help, it would mostly be from the white boys. And one particular night, we broke down by the post office. So they came to help me get started. But then they saw these black boys coming. And they said, "I'm sorry, but I can't help you." And they disappeared. But the black boys, they put some acid, Coca-Cola, on the battery. And the car cranked up. And they followed me home. They followed me home to my house until I got in. And that was their duty, to try to see that these people got back home at night after the rallies. Now, I was there for all of the rallies and marching. I couldn't miss, because I thought if something went on, and I got it second-handed, it's not always right. And I wanted to be there and get it firsthand, so I would know what was happening. I didn't want to go somewhere and be put in jail and don't know what's going on. Now, my neighbor, J.C., she came over one day. I had a beauty salon, and I was working. And she says, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm working." She says, "Don't you know we supposed to go to jail today?" I said, "We?" And she stopped speaking to me for about a month, because she thought that if she was going to jail, that I would be there with her. But that wasn't my duty. My duty was kneel-ins. And I would go on Sundays, and I thought, I'd be safe going to churches on Sunday. I didn't have to worry about going to jail. But they did put people in jail that went to the churches. I was one that was lucky. And I got into the church downtown. And I was with the 2 young men. They were white, and I was in the middle. And we got in, and we sat in the church. And when the usher came by, and he took one look at me, and he says, "If I ever see your face around this town again, you will be sorry." Then I was trembling. And everywhere I went downtown, I was looking around because I didn't want to see that face again. But that was not the worst thing. The worst thing was when we went downtown to march, because every night I had to march, and Andy Young was leading the march. And Horst Manussi was there with his bullhorn, and he said, "I'm sorry, but you can't, I'm not helping. You don't have any help tonight." So we didn't know what to do. But Andy, and I have permission to call him Andy, and he says, "We are going to pray, and we're going to continue." So that's what we did. We knelt down, we prayed, and we went towards the slave market. And by the time we got there, you would have thought that we were with the Indians or something. It was just making all kind of noise, which made you nervous. And they had chains, and they were hitting on this thing. And all of a sudden, a Roxy. And that night, quite a few people got hurt, and they had to be taken to the hospital. All the bricks went by me for some reason. And when they went to the hospital, the doctors there refused to treat them. And they said, "Let Dr. King treat you." So they would have to go to Jacksonville. And I'll tell you another secret. That isn't what I was supposed to say. I got it written out, but I just got carried away on something else. But we all took part on Scott Street on the wait-ins, the sit-ins, and everything. And we formed a telephone tree that we would call each other when the Klans would come through, which was practically every night because they were targeting Dr. Halen. So we didn't burn any lights. You couldn't burn any lights because they would shoot the lights out if you burned the lights. Well, Scott Street was used to them shooting the lights out because when we moved on Scott Street, they didn't want any blacks in that particular subdivision. So the dealer, builders, said that they weren't going to build any more houses because they wanted to build the houses for the black people, but they didn't want us to have them, and we were having problems. So nobody moved, everybody stayed there, and they just came through and shoot if they see a light, and we would cook by the refrigerator light or whatever you had. If you had a little flashlight, you could put it under the bed. And my girlfriend Julia, that would always call, and she would just say, "Hit the floor, hit the floor." Then you would know that the Klans were coming through. But Scott Street survived, and later years, we named Scott Street Dr. R.B. Hailing Place. And I hated to see that name go because I was so proud of Scott Street and what they had done. But since they was going to name it after Dr. Hailing, then it was okay. It was all right with me then. So now I'm living on Dr. R.B. Hailing Place. And I was so impressed when the Civil Rights Bill was passed. And my thing was going around watching the signs. And they had the colored here, and the colored restroom, and the colored this, and the colored that, and the white this and thing. And I said, "Well, when are the rest of these signs coming down?" I just ride around town and see the signs coming down, and when I'd see one come down that I'd been looking at, oh, I would just be happy, happy, happy. And over the Lions Bridge, I think it might have been one of the last ones to come down. And he was a Manussi, and he was my friend. He would call me. I used to love crabs, I still do. And he would call me and say, "Barbara, I got your crabs, come get your crabs," and we would be happy as a lark. But just like I said, you stayed in your place, as they put it. And we were just two little happy campers. And we'd sit there and talk about the crabs and talk about different things. But, you know, I guess if you wanted to think you were equal, then you were in trouble. But things went on for a long, long time. When the signs came down, I said, "Jim Crow was no more. Jim Crow, sat on the walls. Jim Crow, had a great fall. All the king horses and all the king men can't put Jim Crow back together again. So we don't have what we call the Jim Crow, and we're not where we want to be. We're not where we should be. But we are going to follow that light at the end of that tunnel. And someday, when we reach the end of the tunnel, we can say, thank God I'm free.
Rain down your love on your people. Rain down, rain down, rain down your love, God of life. We who revere and find hope in our God, live in the kindness and joy of His wing. God will protect us from darkness and death. God will not leave us to starve. Rain down, rain down, rain down your love on your people. Rain down, rain down, rain down your love, God of life. God of creation, we long for your truth. You are the water of life that we thirst. Grant that your love and your peace fill our hearts. All of our hope lies in you. Rain down, rain down, rain down your love on your people. Rain down, rain down, rain down your love, God of life. We're gonna march in St. Augustine tonight, my Lord. We're gonna march in St. Augustine tonight, my Lord. We're getting ready for the Freedom Day, my Lord, my Lord. Are you ready for your freedom? Oh, yes. Are you ready for the journey? Oh, yes. Are you ready for your freedom? Oh, yes. We're gonna march in St. Augustine tonight, my Lord. We're gonna march in St. Augustine tonight, my Lord. We're gonna march in St. Augustine tonight, my Lord. We're getting ready for the Freedom Day, my Lord, my Lord. Are you ready, my sisters? Oh, yes. Are you ready for the journey? Oh, yes. Are you ready for your freedom? Oh, yes. We're gonna march in
growth and progress has occurred in the 20th century, and we're feeling the effects of it in the 21st century. The fact that both blacks and whites work tirelessly together to bring about justice and freedom is significant. Without whites, we would still be coping with the terror of the Ku Klux Klan. We are at a place where people from all over the country are eager to visit and learn about our rich history, and more history is unfolding every day. The Visitor Center is a good place to continue to learn firsthand about our history. The Chris Alert Museum now has an arts and crafts exhibit of residents from the black community and local schools who are artists, showing quilts, paintings, dolls, and stories about the African American experience. It's behind the Student Center on Seville Street. The progress in the 21st century continues. Let's see what some of these are. I think the churches have played a role in the growth. For example, St. Paul AME has established a school of excellence to develop the potentials of all children and help them to think critically. This will help the black family. St. Cyprian's has programs for children who ordinarily would not be served, and they are part of Dining with Dignity, attempting to hold families together. The American Legion, Post 94, has provided programs which highlight the achievements of children and takes them to visit colleges to encourage higher education. Knowledge strengthens families. The 40th Accord has worked faithfully and consistently to bring the attention through markings throughout the community to tell the story of the important people who made the black community great. The Lincolnville Museum and Cultural Center, an exhibit on a journey providing the history of blacks in St. Augustine, is a must. The Foot Soldiers, as I said before, is a tribute to the honor of those who fought for freedom. Barbara Vickers made sure they were honored in this plaza. The footsteps honoring Ambassador Andrew Young walk during a protest is important for everyone to walk and see. These histories give information to students and to families and help to give the black family pride. On another note, the enactment of the Civil Rights Law accomplished a great deal in St. Augustine that shows progress in the 21st century. There are history that clearly demonstrate when blacks and whites working together for progress. For example, blacks can enter any 4-star restaurant and receive a welcome today. The 4 students who went to correctional prison for protesting during the civil rights struggle received an apology from the governor 45 years later. Not this governor, the previous governor. Blacks can register at any hotel and receive service like anyone else. Our children can go to any school. They can swim anywhere on the beach. Our local hospital treats everyone the same. The pay is the same for blacks and whites, depending on one's category. Everyone is welcome at Flagler and can be assured of first-class service, thanks to Joe Gordy. More important, the West Side finally has received attention. The Samuel Calhoun Center on the West Side became a reality in the 20th century, and in the 21st century, children have a safe place to play, swim, and learn. The Boys and Girls Club was open to help other kids enjoy recreation and after-school learning. And of course, the Wildflower Medical and Dental Clinic, the first of its kind to serve the West Side population, located at the Mount Moriah Christian Ministry. The Junior League has been helpful in raising money for them to continue. White individuals and groups have all made this possible. These were all fought for in the 20th century that are flourishing now. There are still social, economic, and political problems that need our attention to make sure that the black family continues to be strengthened. For now, it's a wonderful town, so let's sing It's a Wonderful World. Very good. Thank you. I end with my favorite poem, which is by Mayor Angelou, Still I Rise. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still like dust I rise. Up from a past that's rooted in pain I rise. I'm a black ocean, leaping and wide. Welling and swelling, I bear in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise. Into a daybreak that's wondrous clear, I rise. Bringing gifts that my ancestors gave. I am the dream and the hope of the slave. I rise, I rise, I rise. So, we'll continue with We Shall Overcome. So let's hold hands.